Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Sarah Fensky. The fact that airport privatization will be on city ballots this fall is the work of two groups. That's the St. Louis City chapter of the NAACP and the St. Louis Kansas City Carpenters Regional Council, also known around town as the Carpenters Union. Working with consultants allied with conservative billionaire Rex Sinkfield, they gathered the signatures, and their ballot initiative, which is now slated for November, would require the city to lease the airport if it gets an offer good for at least $1.7 billion. And city voters say yes to what they're pitching. But just because the Carpenters Union is pushing this ballot initiative doesn't mean it's supported by their union brethren. In fact, last month, the Greater St. Louis Labor Council voted to oppose the plan in question. And joining me today with the backstory is Pat White. He's the president of the Greater St. Louis Labor Council. So, Pat, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Sarah.
So for those who don't follow labor issues, give us a sense. Who all is represented by this Greater St. Louis Labor Council?
Well, just about everybody who carries a union card in the Greater St. Louis area, whether it's Jefferson County, St. Charles County, St. Louis City and County, Warren County, except for the carpenters and then a few other outliers. But we represent firefighters, teachers, pipe fitters, grocery clerks, bricklayers, roofers, you name it. The male personnel. We've got over 100 locals that we represent, and upwards of about 80,000 union members.
Well, so the St. Louis Kansas City Carpenters Regional Council, they've been working to bring this privatization issue before voters for months. What led the Labor Council to decide to consider this issue?
Well, we've actually been involved in this for a couple years now, trying to get ourselves up to date and let the folks that were in the know and the people that were involved in this let them know that, our concerns, because we have a lot of union folks that work currently at the airport. And so we've been meeting with some of the financial groups that we're talking about coming in, whether it be for Volvo or Oak Tree or Ulico, for a couple of years now. My motto really is you're either at the table or you're on the menu. So one of the things we wanted to let them know early on is that we're here to listen and give them our concerns about how this, privatization, something like this, would affect really all of labor, not just the building that may take place out there, or the economic effect that it would have on the region, which always affects us either way, but for the folks that currently work at the airport and how they would be protected. So we've had our finger on this for a couple years now. We really just kind of stood back. I think what changed at this time was some of the entities involved, and we really weren't put in on the ground level at this, and on the way they were doing it and the process that it took place, really.
Well, before I get into that process, you mentioned that you do have a number of workers who work at the airport. Give us a sense of what these people are doing there at the airport who are part of an organized workforce.
Well, we have, from the very beginning, when you show up and you check your bags, the men and women checking your bags belong to our Unite Here group, our hospitality union. We have our operating engineers, which take care of a lot of the maintenance out there. Our SEIU folks are the ones that are maybe mopping the floor or cleaning the bathroom. A lot of the restaurant workers out there are union, and we have numerous trades out there that are working, either on maintenance or working out there on a regular basis for contractors. And plus, the city fire department has a firehouse out there, and Local 73 belongs to our council also.
So you have a number of people who could be directly impacted by this. You said you were meeting with people. This is back when the city was really leading the process. They were considering going out for an RFP. There were a lot of companies that had expressed an interest in this. You met with some of those companies, heard them out. But then you said this new go-round, after the city pulled the plug on its process and the Carpenters Union and the NAACP really took the lead agreed with these political consultants in moving this forward after the mayor pulled the plug. You said you had some concerns about process. How so?
Well, it more the process of how it took place, in such a short period of time. And when I say us, I mean our board is a multi-layered onion, so to speak. There were, some people that that had problems with different entities that were involved that you named. The head of the NAACP in the city actively wanted right to work and made it clear and made it public back when we were fighting this a few years ago. And we've had issues there. As far as the union involved, there's been some jurisdiction issues over the years there with some of our bigger affiliates. And then you have the financier who I can speak for as head of Labor Council, has never been, in my opinion, anti-labor, but there has been some issues that he has taken up that some of the entities on my board really, ideological-wise didn't go along with what he wanted. So there was a lot of layers there, but it was more not that the process took place, because I was actually surprised that it had resurfaced. It was more, trying to jam it through so fast, and then the petition drive and everything else. We weren't on any of that. Now, we did have a couple meetings with some of the folks that were working with that, who are friends of mine, that brought us in and said, hey, this is how labor is protected. And there were some issues in that, and that was public with the RFP. There were some issues with that we didn't like, and, that we wanted to tweak. But once that went by the wayside and the bill failed, we really weren't worried about it as much. But, yeah, it wasn't more the process before and after. It was more of, how it was being handled, with such, very quick, and really we weren't at the table.
Okay. So you were concerned about that. There was a decision that you guys were going to see about taking a vote on this. Was there a lot of discussion then once you guys decided to weigh in?
Yeah, there was, and just like anything else, especially something this big that has to do with, especially with the region, anything that, takes on is something as encompassing as this is going to affect labor one way or another. When, we talked earlier about the entities that we represent here, pretty much any big project in the area, one way or another, whether it's construction or after that construction's done, the jobs that come in are going to affect us. So we have numerous conversations on this. With this, there was so much, like I said, there were so many different groups that may have really been okay with it or wanted to sit on the fence or been totally against it, with the different entities that were involved, whether it be the ones that you mentioned before, the NAACP, the carpenters, or the financier that, Rex.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of discussion about that. But, in the end, we took a vote, and it wasn't unanimous, and there were some people that abstained, but it was pretty overwhelming that we just decided this time, not that the group is against some type of privatization or definitely some change at the airport, but what Board Bill 71 and the petition process, we voted to, as of right now, not to come out in favor of that, to be against it.
Okay. And when you say we voted this, is this the executive board that did this? Is this the membership as a whole?
Well, everything that we vote on at the executive board then goes in front of our delegates, which that's definitely a bigger group. The executive board's made up of 20-odd people that represent different unions in the area. And then the delegates is anybody that participates in the council. Like I said, some of the groups that I mentioned earlier, they have a right to, depending on how large their union is, to send delegates to that meeting. And then that is when we vote on that. So really, anything that we do here that big definitely goes in front of the entire membership to be voted on where we stand. And there wasn't even discussion on this. It was just one of those things where, this time around we decided that, the way the process is set up, the way where it's at right now with the board bill and the petition, that we just weren't interested at this time.
Okay. So as you say, this was a pretty overwhelming vote in opposition.
Yes, I would say that. And like I said, after, it was a pretty lengthy discussion, and really everybody, even both sides, when there were a few that discussed either being staying out of it or being for it. And really, it wasn't adversarial. It was just, this is where we feel we should be now. Because, like I said, we've been in on this process from the very beginning. We've actually had experts come in and talk to us about the privatization of the parking meters in Chicago and how that failed. And, we've had other people come in and tell us about how 40% of the airports outside of the United States are privatized and how successful they are. So we've tried to do our homework on this. St. Louis would be the first one on the mainland. The one in Puerto Rico is privatized, but we'd be the first that would do this. And I think that caught people maybe a little leery too.
Mm-hmm. That just led to some nervousness.
Yeah.
And you have mentioned today that there's a board bill, and then there's also this initiative that the NAACP and the carpenters put on the ballot. And there were these two separate proposals, and I did want to just get our listeners up to speed on this. The board bill that was being pushed by Aldermanic President Lewis Reed, that actually ran out of time. From our best calculations, he had until yesterday to get that bill pushed through and signed by the mayor in time to make the November ballot. And so that one is not happening. At the time that the Labor Council took its vote, it was still a possibility. And so that vote was also in opposition to that. But right now there is just the one that's coming from the Carpenters Union, the NAACP, and Rex Sinkfield. Pat White, I did have a bigger picture question for you. The backers have said there's language in there that would protect union workers at the airport. Why is that not good enough for some of these union members? I know the SEIU, for example, has been very vocal in being against this. What are their concerns there?
Well, I think, there's the issue that a lot of people have, and, yes, there's language in the FAA, some of the things that we've read on them that protects, current bargaining, language that if a company comes in, they are required to respect the language in any contract that's signed now. I think most of the people that are adamantly against this are worried about in the future, about if a private entity comes in and private entities are people don't get into these kind of issues to try and not make money, that we're going to be the lowest guy, which is going to be the worker, the frontline worker is going to be the person that gets hacked the most and the quickest. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the issues. Some of the other issues, and quite frankly, there are some of our trades that are in direct ideological different with the group that is putting up the petition, and we're worried that they would be cut out. And there was some concern about that, but it was just the uncertainty of it all. There was there are some stuff in there. There was some protective language that we were happy with, but once again, no one really likes change, and there's a lot of times out there, especially when you're talking about these multi-billion-dollar companies who we're more worried about that everyday guy and gal that's showing up at the airport every day, to try and make a living and put food and send their kids to school and all that kind of stuff. And really those big corporations, we don't feel, and a lot of times have the best interest involved, and it's just hard to trust that more than anything.
You've alluded a few times to sort of jurisdiction issues or various issues that sort of separate this carpenters union that is pushing this from the other unions within the Labor Council. I know that would have to be a topic for another day. I'm sure it's a very deep and broad issue. But if you could just give us just a brief idea of what is the difference here between them and some of your members?
Well, your everyday carpenter that's out there building, they've been around for probably 100 years that have been out there building. A few years ago, before I was in this post, there was a jurisdictional issue at one of the casinos where between our IBEW electrical workers and the carpenters union, and instead of it being worked out at whatever level it could have been worked out at, the carpenters went out and started their own electrical union. And in our opinion, they pay substandard wages compared to the area, and they directly compete with our IEBW group. And, so that's been, and anybody that's in the labor movement now has either heard about this or knows about it, and it's certainly not a secret, but it's definitely a point of contention, and it makes it very hard. Now I can tell you, in the right to work fight with Prop 8, we all came together and did our due diligence, and everybody came out a winner, and we kind of just did our own thing. But with on any other issue, whether it be this or anything else for the last 20 years, this has been a point of contention. And, and quite frankly, nationally there's more on the way, which, I can't get into now. Like you said, it's more of a conversation for a different day, but there's other trades that are going to be doing the same thing that the IBW are doing now that we're going to be dealing with over the next few years. But yeah, it would make it a lot easier if A, that didn't happen 25 years ago, and B, if we could have gotten something rectified before then. Not that this thing would change, or if this would change that, but it certainly makes it harder to break bread and do other things when you have two big groups like that are so at odds with each other.
So this is not the first time you guys have found yourselves on the opposite side of the table. Pat, last question for you here today. Will the Labor Council be involved with any sort of formal campaign to oppose this initiative that's now set for November?
We don't have any plans to do that. Our sole goal right now is to get labor-friendly candidates on both sides of the aisle elected at a state and national level. We've got so many other things that we need to worry about that directly affect labor every day, whether it be in Jeff City or Washington, D.C., or even just at the local municipalities in St. Louis County and other places that, really we don't have the we don't have the resources, or B, our policy says that we need to concentrate on our folks on everyday things. So yeah, we don't have any plans for that.
Well, Pat White, president of the Greater St. Louis Labor Council, thank you for joining us and explaining this vote in opposition to the airport privatization plans.
Great, anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.